On today's episode of Locked On Canucks, we finally got the decision. Bruce is back. Yes, Bruce Boudreau is back to coach the Vancouver Canucks for another season. We will, of course, break it down. What does that mean going forward? And so much more about the Canucks bench boss coming back behind the bench. And also, it's another day and another segment of our Greatest Canuck Series. It is Locked On Canucks. Happy Friday, everybody, and it starts now.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today, Friday, May the 13th, Friday the 13th episode of Locked On Canucks. I'm, of course, your host, Justin Pooney. You can, of course, find me on Twitter _Process Sports. And, of course, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also, I want to thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasting services. Guys, a big day in Canuckland as the one, the only, Bruce, there it is, has returned to rejoin the Vancouver Canucks for his first full season. I guess you could say his second half of the season or whatnot. The Canucks confirmed the release that the 67-year-old would return for the 2022-2023 campaign. Of course, Bruce took over in the beginning of December when the Canucks got off to that absolutely horrible start where we saw Jim Benning get booted out the door and Travis Green get booted out the door. And let's just say it how it is. The Canucks went 32-15-10 for the remainder of the season. Where, they were dead last in the Pacific Division. They worked their way up to only being 5 points out of the playoffs, as we all know. I talked ad nauseum about it, leading into the playoff chase. The Canucks, there's a lot of positives going on. And Bruce Boudreau, I said at the end of the year, Bruce Boudreau deserved to get another crack at coaching this team for a full year. Now, I thought they were going to give him an extension, but Jim Rutherford and Patrick Levine putting the pressure on, basically saying to saying to Bruce Boudreau, we will not offer you a contract, playing hardball with them. We will not offer you a contract, but you will honor the contract you have right now. So you can opt in before June the 1st. Now, the deadline was June 1st because Jim Rutherford, again, as I mentioned last week, he understands the game, not only the game of hockey on the ice, but he also understands the game of hockey in the front office, playing those shrewd tactical mind games to manipulate other people and manipulate the system to get what he wants and get answers he wants at a premium and at as soon as possible. And that's what they did. Boudreau could have dragged this out till, the end of the month, the couple weeks, and then decided on the last, hey, I'm going to come back. But now that he is back, the real work begins. Boudreau said in the release, his desire was always to come back. He loves the organization, loves the city. And he's also grateful for the opportunity that he was given by Jim Rutherford and Patrick Levine. Now, he did speak to the media about an hour or so ago, and I want to dive into what is going to go next for Bruce Boudreau and the Canucks going into next year, because now coaching is off the list, and that was probably the biggest thing on the offseason checklist that Jim Rutherford and Patrick Levine had going into next year. So next is the contract situations. And what does that entail? Well, we've talked ad nauseum this week about Andrei Kuzmenko and how that affects it. Now, that I mentioned the other day that because Boudreau is such a big part of the recruiting aspect, and now that he's back, that looks like the chances of Kuzmenko signing with Vancouver are increased a lot. Now, reports are indicating that his agent and him are wanting to pick a team that can obviously has the cap space going forward to sign him to a longer term deal. Now, we know the Canucks cap space is, not the best, but in consideration with the other two teams that they're competing with, Edmonton and Vegas, the Canucks are, in my opinion, in prime position to make a move at him. I think going forward with Boudreau, You now know, okay, this is the style we're going to play. This is the structure. Now, style and structure is one of the problems that Jim Rutherford had at the end of the year that he discussed last week. He felt the team did not have enough structure and a certain style of play. They're depending too much on Thatcher Demko, which was absolutely correct. Thatcher Demko should not be put in that position to said, hey, Thatcher, stand on your head, keep us in the games, and we'll try to score as many goals as we can. That will not work for an 82 game season and a playoff run. The Canucks need structure. And now, with Boudreau getting a full off season, we're not only going to get rookie camp, training camp, all of that. Now that he's back, he can start working with players and all that, implementing his systems and really digging his teeth into, because it's hard. It is very hard for a coach to come in mid-season after all that prep work in the preseason and the offseason was done with Travis Green, and then you kind of scrap it midway through the season or a quarter way through the year and then try to work your way up to speed. Now, we'll see what transpires with Boudreau going forward. This year is going to be critical for him. If he wants that contract extension he covets, he's going to have to prove it to the Canucks front office, and that is the situation they have put him in. What happens if this team goes on a losing streak and all these questions about reporters come up about his job security? I think Bruce Boudreau has been around the block long enough to handle that, to withstand that. He wasn't in it. This might be his first time in a Canadian market, but he was in a market in Washington where there was tons of pressure around those teams as well. So it's not like he's adverse to pressure and coaching in a pressurized market. The biggest thing, going back to the structure and the keys, when you look at the Canucks, when they were successful from, let's say, 2008, 2009 to 2012, 2013, we can say the last of that lockout year. Structure was key. The team was a puck possession team, and that was their identity. So now Bruce Boudreau has to find and determine the identity. The same, again, it all goes back to that same thing I talked about in the very first episode when I took over Locked On Canucks. Organizational goals and organizational structure. They have ownership, front office, GM, president of hockey operations, vice president of hockey operations, and head coach now intact. That structure, that hierarchy is now in place going forward to next year. The messaging from top to bottom, from Francesco Aquilini all the way down to the minor leagues and Abbotsford Canucks and everything, it has to be the same. And that is where the work between Boudreau, that bridge between the players and the front office, where that bridge is Bruce Boudreau, that is where it is going to be so important to see how this relationship goes. Because quite frankly, I think we can all say this relationship it's not on roses. It's not the best relationship, considering what Jim Rutherford just said last week. He didn't give him a resounding, why would Jim Rutherford go out there and say all that stuff he said about Bruce Boudreau last week if he didn't have 1,000% support? It was the contract that was given to him, and if they let him walk or they hired another coach, the Canucks would have been the hook for him, right? So this was a critical thing that had to transpire. It transpired. Going forward now, I want to see this team and this franchise have a structure of the way they play. I want them to have an identity of how they're going to play. If you want to be a puck possession team, be a puck possession team. Stick to it. If you want to be a running gun team, stick to it. But the way I see this team structured is you have a backbone in net. You have strong forwards. What are you going to do on the defensive side of the game? How are you going to build that defense core? Are you going to trade Oliver Ekman-Larsson? I don't think so. You have him. You have Tyler Myers. You have Quinn Hughes for the time being. You're going to have to figure out a structure that best exemplifies a way to highlight each player's strengths. What's Quinn Hughes' strength? Moving the puck up, pushing the puck up the ice, skating. Ekman-Larsson, yes, he's old, but he was not bad on the defensive end this year. Offensively, he's not the same guy, but defensively, he's still there. Tyler Myers, the puck can look like a grenade on a stick sometimes, but there are some parts of his game that we can look at. I see Luke Schenn coming back because him and Quinn Hughes played very well this year. So you have pieces that you could put together, but it's all about the structure and how Bruce Boudreau wants this team to play. And I want to see something by training camp that says, hey, this is the type of team we want to be. This is how we want to play. And this is how we are going to play. And I want every player to buy in. And then you need to find this summer, find the secondary pieces that fit that structure that will help this team play their way. Bruce Boudreau and Jim Rutherford, Patrick Alvin collaboratively decide on how they want to play. So, big news at Canucks land. Major news. Bruce Boudreau is back for the 2022-23 season after a 32-15 and 10 record in the second half of the year where the Canucks exploded. They won 7 straight, first coach in NHL history. Boudreau had an immediate impact. Of course, the former Jack Adams winner. He coaches 1,000th game, and he's also is going to get a 600th career win next year with potentially the opening game. He's only 1 win away. So, big news, exciting news, and it is now time to put the work forward. So, I'm interested now. Now we wait and see on how the draft unfolds, free agency unfolds, trades, contract negotiations. As I mentioned, Brock Besser's contract situation probably is next. If they don't figure something out with him, then you might see a trade imminent, like I think is going to happen. Then probably JT Miller, Bo Horvat deals are going to be looked at. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but the number one bullet on that checklist has now been crossed off. Bruce Boudreau is back as head coach of the Vancouver Canucks for the 2022-23 season on a essentially prove-it deal to see if he could deserve a longer-term contract extension and if he could finally get the Canucks back in the place and finally we can go and extend it because I'm sick and tired of seeing these other teams playing in game 7s, game 6s, these high-pressure events because the Canucks need to be in it. Fans in the city want to see it. We all want the Canucks to be in positions to be successful. That's all we want. That is all us Canucks fans want. So Boudreau is done. Now it's time to build the rest of this roster and build the structure and build the style of play of how this team is going to be going forward. Okay, I am fired up. So coming up after the break, we're going to talk about our Greatest Canuck Series because it is another day, another segment of the Greatest Canuck, one of our Greatest Canucks and our Greatest Canuck Series. And we're going to highlight a Swedish defenseman who, quite frankly, gets forgotten a lot, lost in the shuffle. No, it's not Alex Edler. It is number 2, Mattias Ohlund. So coming up after this, we're going to dive into Mattias Ohlund's tenure with the Vancouver Canucks. But first, I want to talk to you guys about Built Bar. Imagine dipping your finger into the plastic tub of a birthday cake frosting and opening your eyes and realizing there's only 150 calories and 16 grams of protein. That is what I like to eat, a birthday cake puff from Built. I just received my birthday cake puffs and I've never had anything like this before. They're available right now and we can't promise they will be here tomorrow. So get them today at built.com. And if you haven't tried the puffs, let me let you in on a little secret because that's what friends do, and we are all friends now. I feel like I'm a part of your friend circle, your squad. Chocolate covered marshmallow protein bar. Yeah, you heard me. Delicious flavored marshmallows covered in 100% real chocolate. Make every day your birthday with Built birthday cake puffs. Built has taken the delicious experience of biting into a fresh slice of birthday cake and robed it into 100% white chocolate with added sprinkles. Like I said, 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, only 9 grams of sugar. This limited time flavor is an amazing option if you are looking for a healthy way to get flavor and variety in your day. All Built Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. And they are made with collagen protein, which is protein that absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Go to built.com right now after I just explained all of those wonderful things and get your birthday cake puffs now. That's it. Go to built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Once again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Okay. As I said, big day in Canucks land. Bruce Boudreau is back in the saddle or back with the Canucks for another year. And as I just mentioned, exciting times ahead. But as I said before, another day, another segment, another part of our Greatest Canucks series, where today we're going to dive into another Swede. The Canucks have a very rich history of Swedes, from Thomas Gradin to, you know, Marcus Naslund, Henrik Daniel Sedin, Alexander Edler, Elias Pettersson, hopefully, to Mattias Ohlund, who, of course, rep with the Canucks from 19, I believe it was 1999, 98 till 2008. Spent the better part of a decade with the Vancouver Canucks and became a franchise cornerstone. Was excuse me, was inducted into the Canucks Ring of Honor back in 2016. He was a All-Star, and he was the Walter Babe Pratt winner, the best Canucks defenseman for 4 years. So Mattias Ohlund, that's just Mattias Ohlund was drafted by the Canucks back in 1994, but he didn't come it took him 4 years to come to the NHL. And by that time, he was re-eligible to join the NHL. Actually did not know this until I was researching this before the show, but Mattias Ohlund was drafted by the Canucks in 1994, the first pick, 13th overall. But rather than join the Canucks, he stayed in Sweden over a contract dispute, and he played in the Swedish leagues for a few years. And then 4 years after, he re-entered the NHL entry draft and signed a contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs worth $10 million over 5 years. Now, the Canucks did still have his rights, and they smartly decided to match it. And then Ohlund made his debut with the Canucks in the 97-98 season, and he scored his first goal against the Toronto Maple Leafs at Felix Potvin, which was very, very interesting. He won the Walter Babe Pratt Trophy. He was also nominated for the Calder Trophy his rookie year. He finished 11th, but he was the 5th highest scoring defenseman that year amongst NHL rookies. He was named to the All-NHL rookie team. And in his second year, he was named a replacement for the NHL All-Star game. And he scored 35 points in 74 games. And the one thing about Mattias Ohlund was he actually recovered from a very horrific eye injury. In the beginning of the 2000 season, Ohlund took a puck that deflected off a stick and struck him in the right eye. He missed the first 38 games of the season, and he had to have surgery to correct his vision. And that's why you saw him wearing a visor going forward. But he came back, and he had to deal with that, but he came back and had a great, solid career. He had a career high 36 points in 01. And the one thing I want to talk about Mattias Ohlund was he registered team record. Let's finish the numbers first. Sorry, excuse me. Over his 11 seasons with the Canucks, he registered team records of 93 goals and 325 points for defensemen until Alexander Edler passed him. His 232 assists ranked 4th among Canucks all defensemen, and he played 770 games with the Canucks, 2nd amongst defensemen and 5th overall. And he also was the biggest mentor to, of course, as I just mentioned, the guy who broke his records, Alexander Edler. And the way Mattias Ohlund played, he was an all-around strong defenseman. And what by that I mean is Mattias Ohlund played the game on the back end, in my opinion, the right way. He wasn't Nick Lidstrom, a former Swede who was, in my opinion, probably the greatest defenseman I've ever seen play. But Mattias Ohlund was an absolute just cornerstone, just a rock. And when you're building a defense core, as the Canucks need to do right now, you need a guy that can kind of do it all. And Mattias Ohlund could do it. As I mentioned, he could put up, 35 to 40, 30 to 35 points a year for a defenseman, which is quite good. It's not your 50, 60 points now or Roman Josi with 90, but, a guy that was physical. Those battles he had with Jerome Iginla, I remember vividly, him and Iginla just going back and forth. But he was just a strong force, just a calming influence. And you need that on the back end. Like we saw that with Luke. I'm not saying Luke Schenn is on the same level as Mattias Ohlund, but you need a guy has such a calming influence out there on the ice that when he's got the puck, you look at Tampa. Again, Victor Hedman's a lot better than Mattias Ohlund, but the way those Swedish defensemen play that style where, they just have that calming influence where They don't seem to get phased. They don't get flustered when the puck's on their stick, where you see a lot of defensemen when the puck is on their stick in high pressure moments, it's like a grenade on their stick and you think it's going to blow up and you're scared every time they touch the puck. That wasn't the case with Mattias Ohlund. He could go back, pick the puck up, make an outlet pass, and move up with the play. And then he also had the physicality where he wasn't going to get pushed around. That's what I mean by he was a strong rock on the Canucks back end during those West Coast Expressers that I've mentioned, took them out of the doldrums that they were in before. So when I look at Mattias Ohlund's career and when I look at his time in Vancouver, he not only was a leader and a mentor in the locker room, but just a calming influence on the back end and just a player that exuded so much respect in the Canucks locker room. And I also think, again, I harp back on these West Coast Express teams, and this is the last player of those West Coast Express eras before we go into the late 2000s, early 2010s team. But just a final point on that era of Canucks teams with Mark Crawford as a coach, Brian Burke as a GM, Marcus Naslund, Todd Bertuzzi, Trevor Linden, Mattias Ohlund, all these guys, Sammy Salo, these guys rebuilt the culture and the foundation of the Vancouver Canucks. And I know they didn't make a Stanley Cup Finals. I know they didn't have the playoff success, but what they did was something that needs to be discussed more about how they helped raise this team up from the ashes where, they had this highs 94 and they fell and they crashed. And they kind of rebuilt the organization. They rebuilt that foundation. And it was a strong foundation with guys like Mattias Ohlund, who was a leading force, a leader on that team, you had a strong leader like Brian Burke. You had a guy like Mark Crawford. You had the superstars like Naslund and Bertuzzi. You didn't have the goaltending, which was eventually their Achilles heel, but that whole West Coast Express era of Canucks just brought back joy to hockey in Vancouver. Something that was missing for many years after 90 to 94 run. There was no more joy in being a Canucks fan. And that group, that era, put it back together and rebuilt the team that, again, allowed this next era to take this franchise to levels in regular season success and postseason success that haven't been matched ever since. So, again, Mattias Ohlund, one of the greatest Canucks of all time, in the West Coast Express era of the Canucks. Thank you for all the memories. Thank you for making me a Canucks fan. Thank you for bringing joy of hockey back into Vancouver. And many people out there might forget about the West Coast Express era. I certainly will never forget about it. And quite frankly, that era deserves its roses as much as any other era in the Canucks because of what they did and rebuilding this franchise back to a certain state of respectability. So, thank you once again. Coming up after this final break on our Friday episode, it is Friday, and there's a bunch of Game 7s happening this weekend. So, I'm going to give you guys my predictions on the 3 Game 7s we have on Saturday coming forward in the NHL, where it's going to be very, very interesting. So, stick around for that. But first, I want to talk to you guys about betonline.net. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, first of all, I want to thank you guys for all making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day or your second listen of the day. I also want to say that Thursday's episode will be uploaded at the same time as this. I don't know why it was taken down. I'm trying to figure that out. But both Thursday's episode and today, Friday's episode, are be up as soon as I'm done recording this episode for your listening pleasure. So thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. Next listen, check out Locked On Now podcast. Check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from our local experts. Of course, as any podcast on Locked On, it is free and available wherever you get your podcast services. So, guys, big Saturday tomorrow in the National Hockey League as we have 3 Game 7s between the Carolina Panthers, I got NFL moment, Carolina Hurricanes and Boston Bruins. Of course, the Toronto Maple Leafs taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning in Game 7. And then the Edmonton Oilers play host to the Los Angeles Kings in Game 7. We could have some more. Currently, it is 3-3. We have another one coming up between the Rangers and Penguins. We'll see if Sidney Crosby patched up. That'll probably be Sunday. And currently, the Dallas Stars are up 1-0, trying to force a Game 7 in that series. And the Florida Panthers and Washington Capitals headed to OT right now to see who forces a Game 7 in that series. So we could have a total 6 Game 7s, which would be absolutely nuts. But let's focus on the ones we know certain are going to be this weekend. So, first of all, I think if Crosby cannot go, Pittsburgh will not win this series. They were up 2-0, and I just don't trust Louis Domingue in net. He's Louis Domingue. And without Sidney Crosby, who's playing unbelievable hockey, I don't see them winning Game 7 at Madison Square Garden. Then we go to Boston and Carolina. The game's in Carolina. I still think Carolina is a better team. I think Carolina will win this series in 7. Going out west, I think Edmonton, I want to say the Oilers. Evander Kane has been absolutely on fire. 7 goals in this series is nothing to sneeze at. He put up the whole 7, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. But maybe a lot of people, of course, people in hockey don't like that because if you bring attention to yourself, it is wrong, which is a whole other topic, that whole other side topic that I just don't want to get into because it frustrates the living daylights out of me. So I'm going to go with the Oilers, but I'm not very confident in that. And finally, the Lightning versus the Leafs. And when you hear yesterday's episode, I went on a little laughing spree about the Leafs, and I kind of talked about how really being a Canucks fan is not that bad if you're looking from a Leafs fan perspective or an Oilers fan perspective. But man, this is giving me hardcore 2011 vibes for the Leafs. Like if the Leafs, it feels like the Leafs kind of have to win, otherwise they're going to be in big trouble. But it's the Leafs; you don't really know if you trust them. So, quite frankly, I'm not even going to give a prediction for that game because I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. The Leafs could win and it wouldn't surprise me, or they could lose and it wouldn't surprise me at all. And I'd love the carnage. I absolutely would love the carnage, but I don't know what's going to happen. So, for the Game 7s that I know that are going to transpire this weekend, if Crosby does not play, Rangers win. I want to say the Oilers win, but I'm very scared about picking the Oilers. I think the Hurricanes win that game because I think they're a better team than Boston. And also, I picked them to win the Stanley Cup, so I need them to win this game. And the Leafs Lightning, I can't give a prediction because I have no idea what is going to happen because I could see both things transpire, and I feel equally strong about both of them, so I don't know. All I'm going to say is, Canucks fans, just get your popcorn out, enjoy. If the Leafs lose, laugh. If the Oilers lose, laugh. If whatever, just have a good weekend. Enjoy. The weather should be nice. Summer's almost here. Bruce Boudreau is back. The Greatest Canuck Series continues on Monday. Next week is going to be a new week. More topics, more fun. Thank you for listening to Locked On Canucks and making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. For your next listen, check out Locked On NHL. From the first round matchups to each Stanley Cup kiss, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. And of course, it is free and available wherever you get your podcast services. Guys, take care. Stay safe.